Hey, what's up, guys? This is Will from Going On Some Places. And one thing I've always wanted to do, and I've written blog posts about this in the past, but it's as a traveler, what camera do you bring? It's the age-old question. And we've come a long way. Look back 10 years to 5 years. I mean, smartphones weren't a thing. It wasn't even a possibility. You had like the point and shoot, the Canon SD series, and there's a bunch more. That came out, it's been an interesting evolution. And then all of a sudden, DSLRs became a thing. My first DSLR was a Rebel XTI, and from there, made the leap into full frame, and now into Micro Four Thirds. So I'm someone that's gone through a very interesting journey, starting from point and shoot to DSLR, crop factor to full frame to now mirrorless. And I thought it would just be kind of a cool discussion for those that have been thinking about like, okay, how do I take the best photos? How does Will take these amazing photos when he's on his trips? And how can I replicate something like that? Do I need to get the crazy camera, or can I be happy with something like a mirrorless Micro Four Thirds system? I will say that I went on a trip. Here's story time. I went on a trip when I first started my blog, actually, back in 2012. I traveled with a 5D Mark II. This is the Mark III right now, but pretty much the same size, a 5D Mark II, full frame camera. So we're talking about full frame sensor, beautiful photos. I've been using it to take incredible depth of field shots, best lenses possible. So I got a 24-70, 16-35. I don't think I brought the 70-200 at the time. I don't think I had it at the time, but it was these collection of lenses. Did I have anything else? I think this was it. And I traveled all around Asia with these lenses, and it was kind of crazy. Photo-wise, I have some of my best portfolio shots from that trip through this camera. Like, you can't deny the quality of full frame and a full DSLR like this. But towards the end of the trip, and I think this is whether you're a travel blogger or just a regular traveler, when you're on the road for a month or even beyond that, then fatigue really sets in. I'm not talking about fatigue of like, being homesick, but I'm talking about just, man, this stuff weighed a ton. I had a backpack that carried all this stuff with the lens, with the body, with the extra lenses as well. Lugging this everywhere was a pain in the butt. And I don't know if any of you can relate to me on this, but like it got to a point where, one, I had shoulder issues. So my shoulders were shot because I was using my rapid strap and I carried it around with me everywhere. And two, I just didn't want to shoot anymore. Like it got to a point where, like, as much as I love the photos I took, especially in Japan, a lot in Bali, I took incredible photos, but I was so tired and I just wanted to travel and not have to like have this burden literally on my shoulders. And so towards the end, I stopped taking a lot of photos. I either kept it in the bag, didn't bring it, decided, screw it, this is gonna be the day where I don't bring a camera. Didn't have a good smartphone either, so lost a lot of good photo opportunities there. But it happens, And I think when you travel with, if you want to be a real traveler, you're not focused as much as I am, let's say right now, on being a blogger or vlogger creator with all this gear that I bring with me. Just a regular guy or girl that wants to travel. Like, lugging this stuff sucks. I mean, I have the personal experience. As much as I love my Canon full frame gear and the quality of photos, like unless I'm going on a trip that's specifically a photography trip, which I did a couple years ago, as a bachelor party out to like Utah, did Arizona as well, Antelope Canyon, which you guys have seen a lot of photos of. Like, that was a specific photo trip. I brought my best gear to make sure I capture the best photos. But think about it, like when you're traveling, you're one, if you're not professional, let's say, quote unquote professional, you're not going to be printing like massive prints. You're probably not going to doing mid-sized prints, maybe like 16 by 10 or something like that. But like, you really don't need the type of quality that this gives you. I mean, it's been so much a megapixel war that people feel like they need to have the full frame sensor with all the megapixels that it provides. But that's when I started thinking about like, okay, what are the other options out there? And that's when I stumbled upon mirrorless cameras. It was a format that had just started to rise. I mean, Nikon was doing some mirrorless at the time. I think Samsung was trying to get into it. Sony had just started. And then there was Panasonic and Olympus. And so it was one of those things where like it wasn't fully researched, or like it was, but just kind of stumbled upon it. And so that's when I found out about mirrorless cameras. So mirrorless cameras, if you don't know, and I'll just give you a brief rundown, is that it's mirrorless in that DSLRs, the way it works is that there's actually a mirror that will flip up and down. When the mirror is flipped, I think upwards, you use this to look at what the lens is seeing, right? And so the mirror bounces the light, goes up into here. When you take the photo, the mirror will flap down. It will expose the sensor, and the sensor will, whatever you have seen in the viewfinder, will be captured into memory. So that's kind of the way DSLRs have always worked, but it's always been a limitation in size, especially if you have a large sensor. With this mirror, all this kind of adds up into being something that's quite large and quite heavy. The form factor is large as a result, and that's why you have all these really big lenses, really good lenses, but really, really big and heavy. Now what mirrorless has done is that, okay, screw the mirror, literally go from the lens to the sensor. So it is a much smaller sensor. I'm not going to go through all the technical details, but it's a smaller sensor. Light literally just comes in and is captured. So it's a different mechanism, simply put. And because of the lack of the mirror, the lack of a optical viewfinder, it eliminates a lot of components. It can be a lot smaller. It can be made a lot more efficient. It's the kind of thing where like new technology came about. Micro Four Thirds is a format that Olympus and Panasonic came up with together. So they're a specific format. Mirrorless is the general term for any camera that's, well, uses mirrorless technology, but is not a DSLR. So Sony has gotten a lot of praise for their mirrorless line of cameras. There's Olympus and Panasonic. Canon, Nikon, and Samsung have kind of died off, so they're not really in the picture anymore. So that's kind of short history lesson about mirrorless. But at the end of the day, if you're a traveler, I've just really fallen in love with the mirrorless system. Micro Four Thirds has been such a blessing for me because like I can now travel with all this gear, but with much less weight. Like I'm holding this right now, and I actually have a scale right here. This is my coffee scale. So let's weigh this. If we just look at the body, these are equivalent lenses. This is 24 to 70. With Micro Four Thirds is a 2x crop factor. So whatever you see in terms of millimeters is multiplied by 2. So this is a 12 to 40 lens from Olympus, their Pro line. So 12 to 40 equals to 24 to 80. So it's pretty close, 2470, 2480, both Pro line bodies for Olympus, and 5D Mark III. There's a 4 now, but this is a Mark III. So let's weigh this. Let's do a weigh-in. And the 5D Mark III weighing in at 1832 grams. So 1832 grams, quite heavy, quite heavy. And then you take the equivalent over here. This is the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II, so their latest top of the line body that I've recently switched to. And this is 975, 976. So we're talking about half the weight. So 976, 1832. That's a little less than, oh well, about half the weight. A little more than half the weight, but it's about half. So that's crazy. Think about carrying this when you're traveling or carrying this when you travel. It was kind of a no-brainer. So a big reason to switch to Micro Four Thirds for me was just weight. And I told you the story of why just like weight killed me. I couldn't carry that much stuff. And I wanted to enjoy my travels. I didn't want to have to lug that much gear everywhere I went. So I could get And it's funny, you're looking at these set of lenses. You have the Canon side, the Olympus side. These are all equivalent. So this is a 7 to 14 millimeter lens. That's like a 14 to 28, which is close to a 16-35 on this guy. And then over here, you have, this is my 40 to 150. Love the design of the hood. 40 to 150, that's 80 to 300. This is 70 to 200. Very good lens. But yeah, like it's pretty much the equivalent. I've replicated what I wanted with my Canon full frame with Micro Four Thirds, and I've successfully done so. So it gives me everything I want. And another reason why, so this is reason number 2 why I switched over, is that quality was just as good. Now, I know a lot of people will say that the photo quality obviously isn't going to be as good as full frame, and I agree with them. I wholeheartedly agree that the quality of full frame is always going to be better. It's a larger sensor. The system itself generates much better, much more pleasing depth of field just because of the crop factor and just the way that these are designed. This quality is good. You're not going to get as many megapixels, sure, but like if you put them side by side, for the photos that I take, the landscape photos, let's say I was in Iceland or in Ireland this year, like the photos were still freaking amazing, right? Like I could still blow them up if I want to. I've made canvases out of these. I've made prints out of them as well. Sure, the depth of field may not be there. And what I mean by that is that when you're shooting at, like, let's say f2.8, it's not going to be as shallow as the f2.8 here. It's almost like a ×2, let's say, factor that's involved. Not quite, but it's something like that. So that's what you're losing out on. But in terms of like quality of the photos, in terms of dynamic range, in terms of just quality in whether it's low light or being able to handle all sorts of like situations, this does the job. Like it does everything this would need to do for somebody that's a traveler. That's all you kind of need. You don't need something that's pro line. I would say even there are articles out there that have done, or professionals that have done the comparison between the two. And honestly, let's say we're not talking about full frame. If we're just talking about like entry-level DSLR, the quality of these is easily equal, if not better, than entry-level DSLR or even mid-tier DSLRs, okay? And so then you're thinking like, why am I going with a system like this, which is like super heavy and like expensive as well, to something like this? So 3 is a perfect segue to price. So something like this costs like, this body alone is $3,000, right? This lens, 20, 25, like prices have changed a lot in the past little while, but like a couple more thousands in each one. You can almost cut that by half for this. Like the OMD EM1 Mark II body is expensive, so we're talking about like over $2,000. Fine, it's still $1,000 less than this, but like when you factor the lens in, this is like probably only $800, $900 now. This is also around that same price, so less than $1,000. This is the only thing that's above $1,000 at like $1,300, I think. It's all kind of half the price of what this is. So you're getting almost the quality of close to full frame-ish, right? To something like this that's a smaller form factor, it's cheaper, it's lighter, easier to travel with. What's not to love about Micro Four Thirds? What really attracted me to Micro Four Thirds is that they really heavily invested in good quality glass. So all these lenses, these are all full metal bodied, weather sealed, pro line lenses from Olympus, and they're freaking awesome. Like all these drop down to f2.8. Quality of the glass is amazing. Ingenious design with the lens hood. Like Canon would have never come up with something like this. Like I feel like this is old school and this is new school in some ways. Like these guys have started from scratch and thought about, okay, how can we improve on digital photography and come up with some really cool stuff. So glass is incredible. All their glass is really good. And on top of that, because Olympus and Panasonic work together on this Micro Four Thirds platform, the lenses are interchangeable. So the mount is exactly the same, which means you have double the lens choices. And that's another thing that drew me to the Micro Four Thirds platform, was really that ability to be versatile. And like if Panasonic really came out with an awesome lens, I could get that Panasonic lens. If Olympus had a really good one, I could get that Olympus one. So it opened up a lot of doors. The last thing I'll say about really these two formats and deciding like what camera do I want to bring is that, like I said, with technology, these guys have really advanced quickly. I feel like Canon has taken a while to get to where it is today, like getting up to 4K video, all sorts of like cool, neat features that I would say they're things that pros would want to use this for, right? So let's say we're talking about like time lapses, astrophotography, things like that. HDR, they've slowly added these features in, but you still kind of need to know what you're doing. Now, with Micro Four Thirds, I feel like with Olympus, what they've done is that they've made a lot of these features very accessible now. So like HDR is something that you can easily just switch to through a button at the top. You can do time lapses really, really easily. One really cool feature with like astrophotography is that it can do that composition photo. Basically, it takes a long exposure photo and it like builds up on your screen. You can see the screen literally develop over time as you're building up your scene with the long exposure and the composition shots that you're taking every couple of seconds. So those are features that are all built in, and those wouldn't be possible with full frame system. These are features that don't exist. So there's a lot of cool tech that's packed into here. Now I will say the knock on Olympus is that one, their menu system is hella complicated. So like it's super flexible and I love it because I've been using it for years now, but like as a beginner, it's really, really confusing. There's so many different options that are out there. Obviously Japanese translated to English sometimes doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So there are some gaps there, but you kind of figure it out as you go along. So like I've really learned to leverage their features that they built into the menu system and easily able to save certain settings. So I can switch to easily, okay, I'm doing portrait shooting, or I want to switch to landscape mode, or I want to switch to astrophotography. So I have different settings for each one, and I can recall them really quickly. They've really taken the leap in terms of 4K video. So all the new videos I've been doing on the channel have been with the Olympus because it shoots 4K now. It has incredible in-body stabilization. That's another thing that I haven't really talked about, but maybe that's reason number 3 or 4, which is the stabilization for photos has always been the best on the market, and now for video, it's probably the best. Without needing a gimbal, I can literally take smooth shots, pan shots and all that, all built in. It's not even on the lens, it's on the body itself. Now they do have stabilized lens as well, the 12-100, which is really, really good. Anyways, I won't geek out on you guys too much. I feel like I have already, but fully articulating screen, touch screen, it has a lot of different features. You can access everything really, really quickly. So love this camera, really great battery life. I feel like I'm a unique one. Not a lot of people use the Olympus system. Yeah, this is Canon versus Olympus. And one more weigh-in right here. This is the 40-150. This is 1051. I don't even want to know. This is 15. Okay, so 500 grams, 1507 grams. I just couldn't see myself traveling with this anymore, especially I hear so much feedback about people saying the same thing, so I can't be the only one that's like this. So why, again, I love Canon. I use it for professional stuff. I do wedding photography with it, event photography. I use this stuff legit. I haven't switched. But in terms of travel, there's nothing better. Like if you want to be able to switch different lenses, you are a bit more serious in terms of photography, especially when you travel, like this is the way to go. Anyways, I think I talked for too long. I hope you enjoyed this kind of rambling of my journey going from Canon full frame to Olympus Micro Four Thirds, and ask away in the comments Leave all the questions that you have. Like if you're going through a similar journey, let me know and maybe I can help you in some way because I've gone through it and I've experienced Olympus and I can tell you why I love them. And make sure you subscribe as well. So drop me a subscribe on the corner here. Love you guys a lot for that. So anyways, this is Will from Going Awesome Places. I'll catch you guys soon.